My Lords, I want to describe what can happen, and in many cases does, if conversion therapy, a pejorative description, I would prefer to call it psychological inquiry, is not employed to gently tease out of an individual the reasons they believe they are born in the wrong body or need to die to be reborn. What other issues might be at play here? Unhappiness at home, internalized homophobia, mental health issues, autism, bullying, a child in care, exposure to extreme and violent pornography? Will a new trans identity solve all these problems? It may solve a few, but not the majority. But in all cases, psychological investigation should take place before affirmation of the gender identity, prescription of puberty blockers, and more takes place. My Lords, the argument that puberty blockers are reversible is a complete lie. They set children on a pathway to further steps that have indisputably irreversible consequences. The CAS review highlighted data from both the Netherlands and the study conducted by our own GIDS demonstrated that almost all children, 96.5%, and young people, 98%, who are put on puberty blockers go on to sex hormone treatment. By contrast, prepubertal gender confusion resolves in up to 90% of cases if the child is allowed to go through puberty naturally. But by gently discussing these issues, that allows time for this natural process. Dr. David Bell asserts once you start them on that path, it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is borne out in the testimony of several detransitioners, such as Richie Heron. He describes a conveyor belt system. That is all affirmation, no question. This extends thence to cross-sex hormones, which have irreversible consequences such as sterility, and thence to surgical intervention. Heron had surgery in 2018, but was left infertile, incontinent, and in pain, all conditions he will suffer for the rest of his life. My Lords, let me speak of another detransitioner who realises what a terrible mistake she made, who was not given any psychological therapy, her gender dysphoria not questioned. She was met with constant affirmation. Now, here I agree with the noble Baroness Hunt and congratulate on her well-reasoned speech. I commend the curious approach. But I disagree with her on the point of affirmation. If an anorexic child believes and states she is not thin enough, doctors and therapists do not affirm this, because it patently isn't true. It would be ridiculous to say to that young girl, "We affirm your views, you must lose more weight." Now, much has been said about Keira Bell, so I'll not repeat what has been said. But this hasn't been said. As a young girl, she was a tomboy. As she grew up, she developed feelings of same-sex attraction, and thence internalised homophobia. She was from a broken home. Her mother was an alcoholic. She went to live with her father. Her father kicked her out, so her only option was to live in youth hostels. In her vulnerable condition, she came upon the enticing idea of changing sex as a means of finding the solution to happiness. She got a referral to GIDS, and we know about that. But on the NHS website, it still states, regarding puberty blockers, and we checked this yesterday, although GIDS advises that it is a physically reversible treatment if stopped, well, I think GIDS have been somewhat discredited, it is not known what the psychological effects may be. Puberty blockers do not just stop puberty. When the body is going through its most important, puberty blockers, you know what I mean. They stop the most important part of growth as you're going through puberty. Physicians knew she was from a broken home and suicidal, but that should have been explored to find out what the issues were. You heard of all the things that happened to her. Every development worsened her health. At 22, she realised she had gone down an irreversible road, so she tried to arrest the decline by stopping the hormones. She has been left deeply unhappy and desperately trying to live a normal life as a young woman. Yesterday, she told me, "It was the job of professionals to consider all my comorbidities, not just to affirm my naive hope that everything could be solved with hormones and surgery. In view of heartbreaking stories like this from the ever-increasing number of detransitioners, is it surprising that parents would want to protect their children from stepping onto this conveyor belt? The vague drafting of this bill will risk criminalising such parents. My Lords, therapy is desperately needed to counter the affirmation narrative. What we are seeing here with the stories of Richie Herron and Kira Bell and countless others is an appalling lack of care. I'm afraid, with the sterilisation of children and mutilation of young adults' bodies, we are stepping into Dr. Mengele territory in the 21st century and in a Western democracy. This is the real conversion therapy, physically trying to change the sex of a beautiful young girl into a boy and then failing and with no post-operative guidance. It is ideologically driven and not necessary.
Yeah.